Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, but have slightly been, upended because Krishna Kirtan told me on Tuesday that I was talking about text 10 and we have text 9 on the board. And you know why that happens? Because yesterday was Ram Navami and we discussed Lord Ram, so we missed a sloka yesterday. But the fact that text 10 is rather a intricate sloka, and I had to do a lot of research to actually work through it, and I really feel inspired to talk about text 10, so maybe with your permission we'll just read the Sanskrit here, chant it, and I'll leave this sloka be till Monday for the speaker on Monday, and I'll word them up that, text 9's to be done. Otherwise, we've got a 2-page purport to this sloka, so by the time we get to the other sloka, which is another page, I think everybody will be sort of drifting off. So you need your concentration for this next one. So is that okay with your permission? Thank you very much. I've said Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yeah. So, Sadyatma Saridevascha Saribhuta Itrida Virat Prano Dasavida Ekada Hridayena Cha Sadyatma Saridevascha Saribhuta iti trida Virat Prano Dasavidha Ekada Hridayena Cha Sadyatma, body and the mind, with all the senses. Sadideva, and the controlling demigods of the senses. Cha, and Sadibhuta, present objectives. Iti, thus. Trida, 3. Virat, gigantic. Prana, moving force. Dasavida, 10 kinds. Ekada, one only. Hridayena, living energy. Cha, also. Translation: gigantic universal form is represented by 3, 10 and 1, in the sense that he is the body and the mind and the senses. He is the dynamic force for all movements by 10 kinds of life energy, and is the one heart where life energy is generated. So there is a following of 2 pages of purport. This is actually prolific sloka, and since I haven't prepared for it at all, but prepared for the next one, as I was told, with your permission, I really would like to read the next one because it is very exciting sloka. So text, but I will ask the speaker to get back to this one on Monday, and I hope you're all here for it, to hear all about the 3, 10 and 1. 10 kinds of life energy, 1 heart, and 3, I don't know what the 3 is. Right? So, text number 10. Shmaran Vishvasrijami Sho Vigyapitam Adhoksaja Virajam Tapasena Tejasaishva Vivritaya. Translation: Supreme Lord is the super soul, all the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation Being thus prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding. Purport. The impersonalists are captivated by the gigantic universal form of the Supreme. They think that the control behind this gigantic manifestation is imagination. Intelligent persons, however, can estimate the value of the cause by observing the wonders of the effects. For example, the individual human body does not develop from the womb of the mother independently, but because the living entity, the soul, is within the body. Without the living entity, a material body cannot automatically take shape or develop. When any material object displays development, it must be understood that there is a spiritual soul within the manifestation. The gigantic universe is developed gradually, just as the body of a child develops. The conception that the transcendence enters within the universe is therefore logical. As the materialist cannot find the soul and the supersoul within the heart, similarly, for want of sufficient knowledge, they cannot see the Supreme Lord is the cause of the universe. The Lord is therefore described in the Vedic language as Avan Manasa Gochara, beyond the conception of words and minds. Due to a poor funded knowledge, mental speculators try to... This is one of Prabhupada's words, isn't it? Mental speculators. Who else would use that? You're a mental speculator, Prabhu. We used to use that a lot. The mental speculators try to bring the Supreme within the purview of words and minds, but the Lord refuses to be so intelligible. Speculator has no adequate words or mind to gauge the infinity of the Lord. Lord is called the Hoxaja, or the person who is beyond the perception by the limited potency of our senses. One cannot perceive the transcendental name of forms of the Lord by mental speculation. Mundane PhDs are completely unable to speculate on the Supreme with their limited senses. Such attempts by the puffed-up PhDs are compared to the philosophy of the frog in the well. A frog in a well was informed of the gigantic Pacific Ocean, and he began to puff himself up in order to understand or measure the length and breadth of the Pacific Ocean. Ultimately, the frog burst and died. Yeah. The title PhD can also be interpreted as plough department. All right? PhD, plough department. A title meant for the tillers in the paddy field. The attempt of the tillers in the paddy field to understand the cosmic manifestation and the cause behind such wonderful work can be compared to the endeavour of the frog in the well to calculate the measure of the Pacific Ocean. The Lord can reveal himself only to a person who is submissive and who engages in his transcendental loving service. The demigods controlling the elements and ingredients of universal affairs prayed to the Lord for guidance. And thus he manifests his gigantic form as he did at the request of Arjuna. Om Adyanati Mirandasya Jananjana Salakya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Durgame Padimindasya Skalapati Gati Mahusvakripa Yustadanina Santa Yantavalambanam. Just read the shloka again. The Supreme Lord is the super soul of all the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Thus being prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself, and thus manifested his gigantic form for their understanding. So when I was reading this shloka, it looked pretty straightforward until I looked into it, and then in the very last paragraph says that Lord can reveal himself to a person submissive. The demigods controlling the elements and ingredients of universal affairs pray to the Lord for guidance. So we are not discussing the demigods within the universe, but we're discussing the demigods in charge of the elements outside of the universe. So this led me down a trail of very interesting research. And I ended up in 2009. In 1990, with a lecture by His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami, who did some elaborate research on this particular sloka. And Tamal Krishna Goswami was one of the first and foremost minds of ISKCON in the early days. He's got some disciples. Rupa Raghunath Prabhu, I don't know where he is, he's his disciple. Tamal Krishna Maharaj passed away around 2000 sometime. And Shamarasa's disciple there. There's probably a few other disciples that are around. So using benefits of his knowledge, I'd just like to explain a little bit about this shloka. But to do this, we have to start from the beginning. And the beginning of creation, of course, is the Supreme Lord. So like Lord Brahma prays, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Adir Anadir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. That Lord Krishna is the supreme controller. Ishvara Parama Krishna. That's the first statement of Lord Brahma. He's the supreme controller. And that is actually very comforting for us people to know, to take reference from Lord Brahma that Krishna's in supreme control. Because then we have someone to turn to for shelter. Just like we have that epic incident in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the greatest demon ever, Hiranyakasipu, tried to defy the authority of the Supreme Lord. Even though he could not get the boon of immortality from Lord Brahma, he thought he'd trick Lord Brahma into granting him that boon by getting all these benedictions whereby he couldn't be destroyed. Like he couldn't be destroyed. There's so many benedictions inside or outside of a place. It couldn't be in the nighttime or the daytime, neither by demigods nor by human beings. It could be destroyed by any weapon. And it went on and on and on and on, right? And when Brahma said, granted, yes, you can have that, you can have that, you can have that, yes, yes, yes. They're not immortal! So then, of course, he was the greatest enemy ever of Lord Vishnu. It so happened because his son happened to be a devotee, Lord Vishnu, he became enraged, and of course we know the story. He's in this pillar, and I'll kill him. He hit the pillar hard, and then Lord Sridev come out and he dispatched him. He come out, Lord Sridev, as we know, was half man, half lion, and he dispatched him with his nails, which wasn't a weapon, and he set him down on the steps of the palace, which was neither inside or outside, and he put him away at twilight, which was neither daytime or nighttime. So this is the efficiency of the Lord, that the Lord still proved he's the supreme controller no matter how hard anybody tries to usurp the Lord. And it's very comforting for us to know that in this age of Kali Yuga, because sometimes in this age which is sort of fraught with reversals, we are living presently living, it's said the symptoms of this age, that religion is deemed to be irreligion and vice versa, that wealth is looked upon as more preferable to renunciation, that strength and beauty is better than knowledge, stuff like that. So instead of searching for knowledge, you sort of build up, you go to the gym, so to speak. So all these things are there in Kali Yuga, and it's become very, very bewildering. And because the result of that is such a topsy-turvy age, sometimes people think that God has neglected us, God's not in control anymore. But No, never fear, God is still here. And of course we know that Lord Krishna here is the Supreme Controller and is here in His holy name. So we're very fortunate if we take shelter of the holy names, because we know that we're under the control of the Supreme. So we just try our best, chant the holy names of Krishna, and then through this association with Krishna in His form and the holy names, then we know that we've got shelter of the Lord. As always, shelter is there. So, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda, He's joyful, He's eternal, and He has form. So He was always there, Anadir, Adir, and He's eternally existing in the spiritual realm. So to be Satchidananda Vigraha, full of eternity, bliss and knowledge, so He's the supreme enjoyer. So that means He enjoys all the time, so He doesn't have to work. So therefore, when there's sort of some action to be done, He dispatches different incarnations or different expansions of His. Of course, we know Krishna is always enjoying this in Vrindavan, but then outside of Vrindavan there is that whole spiritual realm where His expansions, the jivas, the spirit souls that are part and parcel of Him, they compare to little drops of seawater in a seashell compared to an ocean of Krishna's glories. So Krishna has so many wonderful qualities. These jivas have these qualities part and parcels, 50 of the qualities of 64, 50 to 64 qualities of Krishna, but only in small, minute portions. So, but they're enjoying because they're eternally existing in the spiritual realm as the integrated jivas, accepting the role of Krishna's supremacy. So there is a complete harmony, Satchidananda Vigraha, with the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. But in the corner of the spiritual world, there are some jivas there that are misidentified with their position in relationship to Krishna, and the desires of wanting to enjoy Krishna's illusory energy, Maya, the inferior energy, and they're deluded by the fact that they can enjoy separate from Krishna, so they're in the corner there. So to facilitate them, Krishna in His original form, He expands in these expansions, Baladev, Pradyumna and Aniruddha, and so not only do they facilitate the spiritual world, but Krishna, through his expansion, Baladev, becomes Sankashan. And Sankashan, of course, is always there with Krishna to facilitate his pastime. So when Krishna takes birth in the from the spiritual world here in the material world, Sankashan comes with Balaram. And then, of course, when Lord Chaitanya is manifest here, then he comes as Lord Nityananda. So that is Sankashan. So from Sankashan, to facilitate the pastimes of these living entities who are wanting to enjoy the material world, we have Mahavishnu. So Sankashan expands himself as this huge Mahavishnu. We've all seen pictures. Mahavishnu is lying in one corner of the universe, and then Mahavishnu, he has all these jivas that are wanting to enjoy the material world stored in his body, and they're all dormant in a state of sleep, and they're carrying their desires with them. So from the pores of his skin, we know this, that these little golden universes come out, little golden bubbles just come out. We've seen pictures of that coming all out from, sometimes it's said holes in his skin, but you know, it's a little bit more reasonable for us to understand it as pores, because we can relate pores, that we pores, sweat comes out from our pores. So little golden bubbles come out, and they grow, and they become big, and they become like universes, myriads of them, thousands of them, get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then alongside Mahavishnu, to have Mahavishnu Shakti called one of his energies called Maya Shakti. So these universes actually flow towards Maya Shakti because they've come into the accommodating chambers. Maya Shakti is, it's said that she's got these like a womb, the accommodating chamber, and that is a primary function. And then the second primary function is to provide materials for creation. So it's just like Prabhupada talks about the lady in the womb, so the comparison is given that a woman has the aspects for giving birth. First of all, she has the accommodating chamber, which is the womb. And then within the body, she has all the nutrients to form the body of the child. So we're talking about the supreme female potency here into whose accommodating chambers all the universes have come into, and then her aspect to provide all the nutrients is there in this form of fine dust called pradana. So this is in the 12th canto, this pradana, this nutrient, is described as being very, very soft, like grains of sand, but very much finer, and it flows through the fingers like silky particles of dust. So sometimes it is described in the Bhagavatam that when you look at this sort of Mahatattva, this corner of the spiritual world, you see a dark cloud. So a lot of it is the pradana, this dust here. And this dust, this stuff, is the unmanifest. It's all the material elements that we know: earth, air, fire, water, ether, and all the subtle elements, mind, ego, intelligence, all mixed together in this pradana. Right, so that is there. So that is one of the agencies of Maya. One of the aspects of Maya. Another one of the agencies that is there eternally is Shambhu. So we've got Maya there that is there with Lord Vishnu, and he directs all the universes into her chambers. And then similarly we have Shambhu. Now in the Brahma Samhita it talks about Chiram yata dadari vikari viseshi yoga sanjayate hitata pritakasti hetu shambhutam api tata. So Shambhu is like a reflection of Lord Vishnu, but it's not Vishnu. It's like compared to milk and curd. So when you curdle milk, you've got curd, but if you don't curdle milk, you can do so many other things. So Vishnu is so versatile, but Lord Shiva is like Shambhu. Not Lord Shiva, Shambhu is like one of the energies, described like being a halo. So all this is going on. All the universes are coming into the chambers of Maya Shakti, and then to activate all this, to make it all start up, in the Bhagavatam describes that Lord Vishnu glances at the Maya Shakti, and then things become agitated. So this glance is described to be the halo of Shambhu, because it is Shambhu who has contact with the Maya Shakti. So this is a very important part, because Lord Vishnu, he's being completely detached from the material universes. Even though it's a created material universe, he never becomes touched by the material universe. So he never touches Maya Shakti. It's through his agency of Shambhu, and Shambhu actually activates the material energy. And to impregnate this activation, like there is an impregnation, just like there is seed to give birth. So Shambhu carries within himself, he brings the jivas, all these living entities come out of the body of Mahavishnu, and he brings Kala Shakti, which is time. So he comes into those chambers of Maya. So the jivas are in this chamber of Maya, in these golden universes, and the jivas have all their combined karma, which is dormant from their past creation. And we know when the baby is born, he's very beautiful, he's very peaceful, and he's very lovable. But then as the baby grows, then we have the desires start to manifest. Just so like we have when a baby's 2, I think we call it the terrible 2s because they're uncontrollable, or terrible 3s. Maybe both, terrible 2s, terrible 3s. So they're very, very demanding, so many desires. So it's like the living entities that they're in there. There's the influence of time, and within the chambers there's also the 3 modes of material nature. So living entities become agitated, and so then the elements actually begin to manifest. So this is all due to the clans of Mahavishnu. So this reaction is going on. And then all of a sudden, this pradhana begins to separate itself, because pradhana is all this combination of all these material elements, right? And then they all begin to separate and they form all the different elements which become shells around the universe. Just like we know the universe is, we've got the golden bubbles, but then we know around the universe there's different coverings, all the elements. First of all, we've got earth, and then 10 times the earth we have water, 10 times the depth of water we have air. No, fire. Yeah, fire. There. And each one's 10 times more, right through to the ego. So you can imagine the universe is the size of the universes within themselves. So this is described, it's like a chemical reaction. Maybe we have a catalyst. So like if we want to make curd, right? Well, we've got milk, we heat the milk, and we put the catalyst in, which is citric acid, right? You add citric acid to the milk, boom, right? You have whey and you have curd, right? It's like that reaction. So this is the catalyst that Lord Shiva introduces. He introduces the time element. The jivas will start to agitate in the 3 modes of material nature. They're the catalyst, and they separate the pradhana into all the different elements, and it becomes Mahatattva. We heard that. So all these separate elements are called Mahatattva. So they're all there. They've become all these different shells around the universes. You know, each one 10 times bigger than the others. Then within each element we have a presiding deity, and that's the demigods. So these demigods are not the demigods that we know like Indra Chandra, because these the demigods of the material universe are actually the reflections of these demigods that are there in the outer elements, and these demigods are called the Shaktas. They're actually another potency of the Supreme Lord. So this is Krishna Kirtan's not here, which is unfortunate, because he's been studying the Srimad Bhagavatam Rita studiously, because Niranjana Maharaj has been talking about all the travels of the about the Srimad Bhagavatam Rita, and it describes this when Baukamara leaves the universe. He goes through all these different layers and he meets all the different demigods within these elements, right? So this is what we're talking about. I've just come to the sloka here. This is what they're saying. The Supreme Lord is the supersoul to all the demigods, entrusted in the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. Thus being prayed to by the demigods, so that's the second bit, he thought himself a manifested gigantic form for our understanding. So all the demigods are there in their different layers around this golden shell, which is empty, right? And then the jivas are agitating. So it is said, it was described that these demigods, the Shaktas, they couldn't work out amongst themselves what the next step was. So what did they do? As I said into the sloka here, they prayed to the Supreme Lord for help, right? So then when that prayer to facilitate them, Supreme Lord Mahavishnu expanded himself in his secondary form as Garbhodaksha Vishnu into this empty shell of the universe. So we know Garbhodaksha Vishnu is the secondary expansion of Mahavishnu, and then from him he began to sweat because he brought the living entities. He actually brought the living entities inside the universe. He began to sweat, and the sweat came pouring out, and water started to fill the universe, and it filled the universe half full, right? And then when the universe was half full, Sankirtan expansion, Ananta Shesh. Ananta Shesh is an expansion, and that's always there to facilitate the Supreme Lord. So it says that Balaram is also Ananta Shesh because he provides everything for Krishna, all Krishna's paraphernalia. So Ananta Shesh incarnated himself as the thousand-hooded serpent, which is like his bed. And so Mahavishnu lay on his bed, Ananta Shesh, in an ocean half filled with water, and his living entities start to sprout out of his stem up towards the top of the universe, and then there was a big lotus flower that formed there in the universe. And the top living entity within that stem was Lord Brahma. Right? So then Lord Brahma, it is said that he actually received instructions from the Supreme Lord on the creation, how to create the material universe. He was within the womb of the stem. But then when Lord Brahma popped out onto the lotus, he forgot everything, because that's the nature of being born, that you forget everything, you can't remember anything. So Lord Brahma, he's looking around, where am I? What is this? He couldn't remember anything. And every time he looked, he manifested another head. This is the potency of Lord Brahma. So all of a sudden he's got 4 heads looking all directions. He still couldn't see anything. So then he dove back into the lotus stem trying to find his source. And Srila Prabhupada compares this to the scientists. This is what the scientists are doing. This is the frog and well philosophy. That they're looking for the source. They're diving into... Lord Brahma didn't see anything. It was just the original source was gone. So the scientists, they've got the microscopes, are trying to work out the sort of minutest particle in the atom, and the further they go, the more particles they find. So now they're past the proton and the neutron and the nucleus. Now they've found another 10 other particles that are within the atom to try and explore that. That's why they need the Hadron kaleidoscope, boom, and they'll find more about these. So the further they go, the more confused they become. And then they've realised now that there is no formula where they can understand the patterns of the atoms. That's within the microscope. So they've done a full circle, and with the telescope they're going out there into the gigantic universe. Oh yes, there's life up there in the Canis Major galaxy. But if you actually look at it, you see that the spaceships up there in the sky, they're travelling at 7 kilometres a second, right, to maintain their pace, and maybe they can increase it a little bit to 20, 30, 40, 50 kilometres a second. But we know the speed of light is 186,000 kilometres a second, or miles a second. And the nearest galaxy, according to them, which is a bit dubious, I reckon it's 25,000 light years away. So they're light years away from... They're not actually... They're like done the full circle. They're not getting anywhere. So this is the material scientists, yet they puff themselves up by their abilities. Like Prabhupada says, the plough department, their PhD, I'm a PhD, I'm a scientist, don't talk to me about the creation, God, stuff like that. So they're very deluded, and they're deluding the public. This is why Prabhupada is very severe, very strong about it. So anyway, Lord Brahma comes back up, and he hears 2 words, ta and pa, means tapasya. So when Lord Brahma begins to meditate, then Krishna reveals to him the process of creation, and to help him, Lord Krishna manifests as this gigantic Virupa form. So this is the second part of this sloka. He, thus being prayed to by the demigods, he thought to himself, and thus manifested the gigantic form for their understanding. And Lord Brahma, he got the mercy from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he was able to assume this subtle form of the Virat Rupa of this universal form, and he was able to study it, starting from the head, and as described in the second canto, 6th chapter and 7th chapter, that all it's described that the high planets are the head, the middle planets are like the waist, and the lower planets are like the feet, the thighs and the feet, and the lowest planet, Patala Loka, the planet that we all dread to go to. That's why we wear Tulsi beads and chant Hare Krishna. It's on the soles of the feet. And that's where retribution takes place. So this is a part of the universal form. And then, of course, there's all the different, the skies like the stomach, and the eyes are like the sun and the moon. And so therefore, so Lord Brahma, he could understand the process of creation. So at that point in time, he actually was able to begin the creation, where all these living entities, they've been there, they're in the stem, they're busting to come out. The stem is white hot, as said, because living entities, they've been asleep for a whole night of Lord, for a whole Pradana, Paraha, as it's said. So Lord Brahma, he lives 100 years, and then the universe is wound up in the body of Lord Vishnu. All the living entities go back to Lord Vishnu and they come out again. So they've been in the body of Lord Vishnu for forever, you might say. And so they're full of desires. They want to come out. So then Lord Brahma learns how to facilitate all the different aspects of the creation, and he creates all the different 8,400 million species of life. And then we have this wonderful form of the universe. So for the impersonalists, they're very, very much attracted by this Lord's energy. And that is very good if we can understand that actually this is the Lord's energy. So in the 2nd canto, the 12th canto and the 3rd canto, it talks about this universal form, where it gives us an understanding where we are living in this Lord's energy. Just the universal form has been described as being everywhere in the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, planetary systems, the trees, the grass, the rivers, the mountains, the air, space, everything is the Lord's creation. So if we understand our relationship, that actually this is the Lord, He's the supreme controller, we're in this creation, then we have a perspective. And that way it helps us to become conscious of our dependence on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Lord Brahma prays. I'd like to just finish with something that I just saw in the 2nd canto. It's called Purusha Shukta Confirms, also about the universal form. And Lord Brahma is praying that it's best for me, didn't bring my glasses, best for me to surrender unto His lotus feet, which alone can deliver one from the miseries of birth and death. Such surrender is all auspicious and allows one to perceive all happiness. Even the sky cannot estimate the limits of its own expansion. So what can others do when the Lord Himself is unable to estimate His own limits? And Prabhupada just describes quickly in the purport here, just wrote something down, means that the consciousness of living being, the Lord of all, the Lord we serve, is like our consciousness, like a frog in the well consciousness. Instead of worrying about concocting happiness of life through increasing artificial needs in the name of economic development and scientific advancement, one should simply surrender unto the feet of the Lord and make a solution to all miseries of life. Oh, that is the solution for us in age of Kali Yuga. We have the Maha Mantra. So I hope some of that made followed through a little bit. It's quite a fascinating experience to hear about the beginning of creation here. So thank you very much for all listening. Would there be anybody? We have a few minutes. Anybody like to make a comment or correction? Or, yes.
Thank you, Vasu. That was really descriptive. And it gave me a lot of images in my mind to sort of float with. I guess I kind of had 2 questions. When you mentioned that, all the 8,400,000 species of life were created, is that like at the same time that all the jivas are released, formal creation? So
well, it's gradual. Lord Brahma has a bit of difficulty there. It doesn't actually go according to plan, even though Krishna gives him the plan. The first living entity that he brings out is Narad Muni, who's a transcendental sage, and he wants nothing to do with it. They'll bring these jivas out. So then he gives birth to the 4 Kumaras, and they're great sages too, because all the sort of elevated sages are close to the top of the stem, say, oh no, we don't want to take part in this, we want liberation from this material universe, we don't want to become entangled with the 3 modes or whatever, so they refuse to be any older than 5-year-old boys. So then Lord Brahma becomes a little bit angry, and then out of his forehead Lord Shiva manifests. So Shiva's the expansion of Shambhu, so that's the Shambhu element. We have Maya Shakti and Shambhu. They're helping Mahavishnu form the universes, so they enter into this universe as Durga Devi and Lord Shiva. So then Lord Shiva is asked to procreate, but then he gives birth to all these little Rudras who become very angry because they're influenced by the mode of passion and ignorance, and they create havoc throughout the universe. So Lord Brahma goes, Lord Shiva, you better let me create, the living entities. You just sit and meditate, all right? So Lord Shiva sits and meditates. And then he begins with the Prajapatis, right? The Prajapati Daksha and so many other. And then they begin to bring forth all these different species. But there's also trouble there because Prajapatis also, Daksha is bringing out all these really nice sons, Haryasvas, 10,000 sons who are, entrusted with becoming grihastas and forming all the different, helping jivas form all the different bodies. But Narad Muni sees that they're so peaceful and tranquil and everything that he encourages them to take the spiritual life, and they renounce grihasta life and become spiritualized. And he did that twice to Daksha, and Daksha became angry at him. He cursed him that you're never going to stay in one place more than 3 days ever. So Narad Muni took that as a blessing, actually. So, and then afterwards all the other Prajapatis, and then the universe started to unfold, and then different Kashyapa Muni and different Munis, their wives gave different birth to different species, not only human species, but other species were born through the agency of different births. So there's 4 types of birth, as I was talking about the other. There's seminal birth, there's birth through eggs, there's birth through sweat, and there's birth through seeds, right? So that's how the universe was populated. And then all the other subsidiary demigods came into place too, and took charge of the different planetary systems. Next question.
He's amazing, isn't he? He knows all of it. Just like off the top.
I love this. I love this, I love this stuff.
Just goes out of my head, man.
The representation of the lotus flower as well, like the Loka Vrindavan, also out of Mahavishnu, like the lotus flower. Well,
the lotus flower is a symbol of, the most beautiful, perfect symbol, which is a reflection. The lotus flower is a reflection of the spiritual world. In fact, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. A perverted reflection, it's like looking in the water, and the water sort of, you don't quite see the image as it is, so, but we become deluded by it, that we think that this is the real world.
I understood the lotus is because it's out of the water. It's not like a flower in the water.
Yeah. That's one aspect of the lotus, that the lotus, it's out of the water. Yeah, very good point. And now, I've got 2 minutes, 2 more questions.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. That was so fascinating. My question is just when you were describing when the universes go into the chamber, and you were saying that the elements are on the outside and the modes within it.
No, the elements weren't on the outside. The elements, there was the pradana, that's the fine dust.
Well, that happened, and you were saying that the
Well, actually, there was a function of Maya. There's two functions of the Maya Shakti. One is to create the chamber, and the other one is to provide the pradhana. So the pradhana was also there, I don't know, within or around the chamber. It was available anyway.
Also, would that have been outside?
The chamber?
Yeah. Outside of the universes. But
yeah, outside
within the chamber, but outside.
Yeah, within the chamber, but outside the universes.
You said at one stage how because the modes were within the universe, that the jivas were like agitated by the modes.
Yeah.
But then you said
they were within the chamber. Within the chamber, all the elements. There was nothing in the universe.
That was just where I got the misunderstanding.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Last question.
About Brahma, when he didn't know anything and he got confused and was wondering where and he heard the word tapa, austerity, and it seems that if when Mahatma Prabhu came, he talked about austerity, that we have to go through austerity, and yet Prabhupada said, chant, plant, peace, and be happy. And then Srikanta Sen Prabhu, he mentioned that in Sydney, one of the last classes, Mahatma Maharaj mentioned that Prabhupada kicked us. We actually, our philosophy is also based on austerity and suffering. Because, and then Mahatma Prabhu elaborated that Krishna is happy when he sees that we are sacrificing for him. And that's how we reciprocate. So I'm just a bit unsure about suffering because sometimes
maybe I could just because it's going on, I think what you're saying about austerities, tapasya. Well, I was just listening to class, might have been even Tamal Krishna said that actually, even though, we and Srila Prabhupada didn't recommend, any tapasyas or austerity or too much fasting or whatever. The austerities followed the four regular principles in chanting the rounds, and just by Prabhupada's example, we can see how austere Srila Prabhupada was in the form of following the regulative principles and doing his sadhana bhakti. So that is our austerity in the age of Kali Yuga. And it is worth way more than the yogis who are performing the sort of austerities that they do maybe in the cave in the Himalayas and meditating and sitting still trying to control the mind, because the process of the Kali Yuga is just the process of controlling the mind through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So it's relevant to austerities. Austerity is different for different ages and different situations. So Lord Brahma's austerity was to sit still and meditate, control his mind, and focus on the Lord within the heart, and then the Lord revealed himself. All right? Okay, Jai. All glory Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Thank you.